someone's disaster, but it's good to know that there are people like you doing this kind of work. Thank you very
as well.
much.
Thank you.
Another man who is almost legendary in this field is Chief Michael Camelot. He is the leader of a team of search and rescue specialists based in Fairfax, Virginia. Chief Camelot also worked on the rescue efforts at the Nairobi embassy bombing and Oklahoma City. And that Fairfax team of yours, I wonder if and when you guys ever spend any time in Fairfax, Virginia, because every time I talk to you, every time I see you, you're off bringing help and comfort and your expertise to people in some distant point. But tell us what you've been doing at the Pentagon.
Good evening, Ted. We arrived yesterday at about 1:30 in the afternoon. It's a little ironic to have something like this happen literally almost in our backyard. It doesn't give you a whole lot of time to repair. We went into immediate action yesterday during the daylight hours, putting what we call a search and recon team in, two of them, 10-person teams with canine dogs and the like, doing sweeps of the floors. As you're aware, the Pentagon's 5 stories high. We were working in the outer E ring at the time, both left and right of the impact area, trying to assess any areas where people might still be alive. We weren't able to find anybody alive. We continued up until dark. Arlington County Fire made the correct decision last night not to allow anybody to work inside. So at that time we ceased operations and then we came back on. We're working the nighttime operational period.
I made the assumption, as I suspect a lot of Americans did, because we like to believe that our military has nothing but the best, that the Pentagon is a spanking, modern, up-to-the-minute kind of building. And what I'm hearing is it's really kind of an old, crumbly, not terribly secure kind of building. You want to just talk about the Pentagon itself and what kinds of problems it has constituted in terms of, first of all, putting the fire out, which, as we heard from Jim Sciutto earlier this evening, only happened about 5 hours ago. And secondly, in terms of just the survivability of the building.
Yeah, the Pentagon is absolutely an amazing building. Pre-war construction, just incredibly stout construction materials. In many places, floors 2 feet thick, walls 2 feet thick. As you're aware, there's 5 concentric rings. The outer ring is E ring. It's amazing that with the 757 coming in at probably full speed, the outer ring took most of the brunt of the force, and we thought at first it'd probably go into the D ring, C ring, B ring. Very little of that happened. What's been interesting for us is it took out the columns, especially to the left of the impact area on the first floor. So you literally have 4 floors above that hanging in what we consider a cantilever position, or unsupported anywhere but at one end. So last night, overnight, we had to do some pretty amazing lumber shoring underneath to try to support this to prevent any other future collapse of that part. We've had problems, as you're aware. Arlington County did an amazing job with trying to fight the fires. You have a tile roof with heavy wood members under it, so any water you throw on top the tile sheds it off. It's hard to get to water on the fire underneath. We had trouble with having the electricity taken down. It was interesting, a lot of the water pipes broken. We're asking for the water to be taken out, and they said, well, we can't because all the valving is so old, we can't shut the valves. So there was a lot of unique challenges in this operation.
Chief Camelot, if you would stand by for a moment, I'd like you to listen to the conversation I'm going to have next and also to join in. Joining us now is Stuart Fluke. He's a computer specialist who works at the Pentagon. Mr. Fluke was about 20 feet away from the point of impact yesterday, and all I can say is how did that sound and feel? I mean, just if you can recreate that moment for us.
I mean, the wall just shook around us, and then the wall collapsed around us. There was nothing but drywall, and it was rubble. We all ducked, some of us ducked down, and that I saw a ball of fire go through the room, and then I helped a colleague of mine put her hair out with my shirt, and we exited through what was a wall. It was a total disaster. I mean, my room doesn't look like anything like an office anymore at all, other than total rubble.
Was there, I didn't quite understand what you were telling me, Mr. Fluke, about putting your shirt over the colleagues. Was she on fire, or did you put it over her head to help her get out of a jagged area? What happened there?
Her hair was on fire, and she had asked, I looked up and her hair was on flame, and I tried to put it out with my hand, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I realized that the hand wouldn't put it out, and I pulled the shirt over my head and put it out, her hair out with that, sir.
Can you tell me what the I mean, there must have just been a sense of, were you really just 20 feet away from it? Because I'm thinking it sounds almost like a definition of chaos. If a plane comes crashing into an area 20 feet away from where you are, how did people react? That you even had time to take off your shirt and put out a colleague's hair that was on fire amazes me. Just talk about what those first few moments were like.
Well, the first moment was a total thunder and rumble, and the walls, I felt like they were, you could feel like they were shaking like a drum, and then they came down on us, and it was totally black in there. But it settled down for a moment, and then I could see with some type of light. It wasn't the light from electronic lights, from fluorescent lights, because interior in that Pentagon there's no light at all. But I saw, I don't know if it was fire or something that lit up the room, but I was able to see my colleague and take care of that situation.
Chief Camelot, as you're listening to this, in those first moments, can you recreate what it must have been like in there?
Yeah, it's just overwhelming, Ted. I can't imagine what the noise must be like for something like that. It certainly must be hard to describe. What's interesting is the similarities with this in Oklahoma City and Nairobi. Obviously, those were truck bombs. This was the impact of a jetliner, but just the amazing force imposed by both of those is staggering. With the extensive amount of fuel, it was amazing for us to see the burn patterns inside a pretty lengthy direction, left and right of the impact area. Amazing burn patterns on a number of floors of the building.
What we've seen at the World Trade Center is that quite obviously tens of thousands of gallons of aviation fuel exploded and created a fire of enormous heat. Did the same thing happen there at the Pentagon?
Yes, in a more confined area. I think, again, this is indicative of the type of construction. The World Trade Center certainly is a steel frame with a glass skin on it, a much lighter type of construction, more flexible, as high-rises tend to be. The Pentagon is extremely stolid construction, massive concrete timbers, and I think that probably contained a lot of the impact and the explosive effects, as opposed to, just having it blow out the windows and go out the other side like the World Trade Center did.
Give us the benefit of your experience now in terms of the chances of survivors, both at the Pentagon and from what you must have seen and heard on television about the Twin Towers in downtown Manhattan. Chances of survivors at this point?
Yes, we tend to find that for Nairobi, Oklahoma City, and now this, the chances are obviously very low, just with the amazing amount of heat, the blast impact, and then afterwards with the resulting fire. Even by the time we put our search people in, which is a number of hours later from the initial impact, they had a lot of trouble, just the amount of residual heat that the building maintains. It was very difficult on our people. They were wearing structural firefighting gear, protective gear as they go in. It was difficult on the dogs. Just the amount of acrid smoke that's in there for anybody who might have survived the immediate impact right around there. These type of other effects are, very detrimental and don't lend themselves to much survivability afterwards, and I'm sure it was almost exactly the same in the World Trade Center.
except that obviously you've got a much, much larger structure, and I'm concerned about some of the effects, as I think New Yorkers are learning to be now, of the, and it sounds silly to be talking about air pollution, but you know what I'm talking about, some of the pollution of some of the chemicals that are released into the air when a building like that comes down. How real a problem is that?
Extremely problematic, certainly just with the amount of fuel and everything, the toxic vapors that are a byproduct of that combustion. But then when you take into account all the infrastructure of a modern high-rise building, gas and other things, even the combustion products of things like office furniture, very toxic and the like, for anybody who might be in the floors above that survived at first, as we know from you know, some of our worst just normal high-rise fires, it is very difficult on the people. You know, that itself can take a lot of people out. I think what amazed us the most about World Trade was we were watching a lot of it live as it was happening, and in fact at the station I was on duty, we were discussing the fact that we didn't think that the building would fall. You know, they had the First Interstate Bank Building fire in Los Angeles, fire in Pittsburgh, and we've never had a high-rise collapse like that, and it was just absolutely shocking to us to sit there and watch it happen live for both of the towers to collapse. That was, I know for us, extremely unexpected.
Talk to me now just for a moment about what's happening behind you there at the Pentagon. What actually is the process that is underway? Still search and rescue, or is this just a matter now of cleanup already?
We're still in the search and rescue mode because, as in New York City, you're hearing of some of the miraculous rescues. We haven't given up total hope. Very much we're in the mode of the identification of location of bodies, marking of such. That's what our search and rescue teams are doing, with a dovetailed effort by the FBI coming in for documentation and body removal. We're making assessments with our structural engineers. We still have these areas right directly at the impact site of collapsed floors. We have to do, and what will ensue over the next couple days is what we call a delayering process, where literally we just pull the building apart layer by layer using cranes, heavy cutting equipment and the like, which when you do these type of things is you pull maybe a ceiling, a roof section off, and then the subsequent floor under that. It opens up areas of voids. We tend to find victims in this fashion. It's a very complicated process. It's a very dangerous process, and so we do it in a very systematic way.
I was about to say, it almost defines the term hurry up slowly. Just explain to us why that prevails at the moment.
Well, especially as we get into the latter days, obviously, unfortunately, with deceased victims, time is not of the essence. Our priority there is the safety of the rescuers. I mean, any citizen of our country just knows the negative, the dramatic impact of this. The only thing I could think that would make it any worse is both here in New York City to then have any rescuers either seriously hurt or killed after that. So safety is paramount to all the agencies here, Arlington County FBI, the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Teams and the like. So we try to approach everything in a very systematic way, safety of the rescuers being paramount, and that does lead into this sometimes hurry up and wait type of atmosphere, which is necessary. There's not too many ways around it. It's better to take it slow and methodically, try to do the job right the first time, even if it takes longer.
Chief Camillo, you and your men and women there in Fairfax County, the fire department and the fire and rescue there do an absolutely amazing job. You have become justifiably famous worldwide, not just for your skill, but also for the courage and the dedication with which you've gone into these things. Thank you very, very much for the work you do, and thank you especially for taking time out to talk to us this evening.
Thank you, Ted.
I'm joined now by a former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, also a former general in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Prime Minister Barak, it's good to see you again, although not on this occasion, I must tell you. What do you make of what's been going on?
I believe we are in a different world right now, and facing this terrible disaster, there is no other way but stand firm and fight back, and I believe that that's what the whole world will be ready to do shoulder to shoulder with the fighting spirits of America.
When you talk about